for their good work. I often agree with Senator Hutchinson. This is not one of those opportunities, and I hope my colleagues, when we have this vote on the extraordinarily important resolution involving net neutrality, I hope my colleagues will vote against the Hutchinson resolution. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Texas.
How much time is left on our side?
79 minutes and 14 seconds.
Okay. Thank you, and I yield up to 10 minutes to Senator Barrasso.
The Senator from Wyoming.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I come to the floor today to support Senator Hutchinson and to talk about this role that's being played now by the Federal Communications Commission in terms of regulating the Internet for the very first time. I oppose having these bureaucrats regulating the Internet. I support the resolution of disapproval that is now on the Senate floor. In the 2008 presidential campaign, then-candidate Obama made it very clear that he was for empowering Washington's bureaucracy through more red tape. The president was not looking to make Washington more efficient, in my mind, or more effective, but to make Washington bigger, to centralize power in Washington. One of his campaign promises was new regulation called net neutrality. It appears to me the president then appointed one of his school friends and basketball buddies to be chairman of the FCC, possibly with this in mind. So here we are, 2011, and it seems to me that Congress now is being asked to make a decision. And I want Congress, asking Congress and my colleagues, to reverse the course of the bureaucracy. The administration did not even deem this rule to be what they call significant. Well, a significant rule is one that has an impact on the economy of at least $100 million. And I believe this is a significant rule. I support Senator Hutchinson and her resolution because it will keep the Internet free and open. Republicans and Democrats agree. Earlier this year, the House of Representatives passed a similar resolution, and it had bipartisan support. Net neutrality is very real. The time to act is now. We'll be voting in the next day or so, and the reason that we need to act now is that the rules of having more bureaucratic government control go into effect in just a few weeks, November 20th, 2011. It does seem that Congress is being disregarded. Congress has never delegated authority to the FCC to regulate in the past. The Communications Act of 1996 had a goal, and the goal was, quote, to promote competition and reduce regulations. Well, 1996, Bill Clinton was President of the United States. This is what it said again, the Communications Act 1996, the goal to promote competition and reduce regulations. Instead, we have unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats who are ignoring Congress and voting for regulation of the Internet. Well, let's take a look at the overall economy. Right now, we have 14 million Americans who are out of work. The numbers again this month, 9% unemployment in this country. And the administration is now making it a priority to regulate another sector of our economy over jobs. The FCC has opened the door for Washington bureaucrats to take over a sixth of our economy. They ought to be focusing on creating jobs in this country, making it easier and cheaper for the private sector to create jobs. But between health care, banking, and now technology, this administration is taking over our economy sector by sector and making it more expensive and harder for the private sector to create jobs. The FCC's actions threaten innovation and they threaten investment in America. Regulations are the biggest burden being faced by small businesses in this country today. And if you don't believe me, just ask them. The polling of small business owners has said it is regulations coming out of Washington that are their biggest burden today. Technology pioneer and Apple co-founder Steve Jobs warned President Obama about Washington red tape. There's a new biography out about Mr. Jobs by Walter Isaacson, and this is what he said in the biography. Quote, Jobs described to Obama how easy it was to build a factory in China. And he said that it was almost impossible to do these days that in America, largely because of regulations and unnecessary unnecessary costs, end of quote. This rule that we're looking at today transfers the future of the Internet out of the hands of the American people. It makes government the gatekeeper of Internet services. Former FCC Commissioner Meredith Baker has said, quote, the rules will give government, for the first time, a substantive role in how the Internet will be operated and managed, end of quote. This means that the future of Internet technology, whether on a smartphone, an iPad, or a computer, will be in the hands of Washington bureaucrats. You know, engineers and entrepreneurs will not be able to give us the Internet that we want at a price that we want. Former FCC Commissioner Baker also said, quote, by replacing market forces and technological solutions with bureaucratic oversight, we may see an Internet future not quite as bright as we need, with less investment, less innovation, and more congestion. No American wants that, but that's what this government is giving to the American people. To me, this means that recent Internet service innovations like 3G and 4G wireless speeds and new fiber networks now become riskier investments. Less investment means that every American's ability to access the Internet that he or she wants may be affected. Less investment means fewer jobs. 4 months ago, President Obama realized that he had a regulation problem with independent agencies like the FCC. He issued an order, an executive order, asking independent agencies to review burdensome red tape. Instead of reviewing red tape, they have rolled out even more of it. The presidential review has fallen woefully short. The President asked independent agencies to produce a plan to reduce regulations within 120 days. 120 days yesterday. So the 120 days has come and gone, and what we received once again from this President is more rhetoric and little by way of results. If there was ever an example of an independent agency rule that needs to be put against the President's rhetoric, it is this net neutrality rule. Net neutrality picks winners and losers. It threatens smaller and rural providers. Brett Glass of Lariat, a wireless Internet service provider in Wyoming, warned the FCC about the effects on smaller providers. He said that the red tape will hurt his ability to deploy new service to currently underserved or unserved areas. He warned that many broadband providers, they're small businesses and they're serving rural communities. He wrote, quote, the imposition of regulations that would drive up costs or hamper innovation would further deter future outside investment in our company, he said, or others like it. So here we are. Americans have made it very clear that they oppose Washington worsening the web. Over 60% of voters oppose Washington putting its hands on the Internet. This regulation that we're debating today is a classic example of Washington trying to fix something that is not broken. 93% of Americans are satisfied with their broadband service. 91% of Americans are satisfied with their broadband speed. The Internet is working remarkably well. There is a fundamental disconnect with those in Washington who seek a more powerful bureaucracy and those at home in the 50 states of our union who are seeking a stronger economy. The warnings are real in Wyoming, in my state, and all across this country. Congress must step in where the bureaucrats in Washington have overstepped. Senator Hutchinson's resolution of disapproval should be supported on both sides of the aisle. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The senator from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of this resolution to disapprove the FCC's open Internet order. As we all know, the FCC wants to regulate the Internet. And why? Well, there must be some sort of market failure, right, that needs correcting, or some sort of Internet issue that needs fixing, or some out-of-control providers that need regulating. After all, why would you need the regulations? But that's not the case at all. In fact, we're talking about as one of the most successful sectors of our economy, one that's flourished with limited government regulation and continued to create jobs in the midst of a very deep recession and economic downturn. Now, since the Internet was privatized in the mid-1990s, it has prospered. The industry's growth and impact on our economy, as well as the development of new life-changing technologies and applications, is simply staggering. 20 years ago, the Internet, as we know it, did not even exist, and now over 2 billion people use it. 10 years ago, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Skype did not even exist, and now hundreds of millions of people around the world are users. 5 years ago, mobile applications did not exist, and at the end of last year, there were over 500,000 applications or apps, and over 10 billion will be downloaded this year. Hopefully, they'll be downloading mine, because we came up with an office app yesterday for our office. 2 years ago, the iPad did not exist, and now over 25 million of them have been sold. All these advancements have expanded broadband access and encouraged private investment. For example, in 2003, only 15% of Americans had access to broadband, and now over 95% do. And this growth will only continue. In its annual report on the Internet, Cisco projects that the Internet will quadruple in size over the next 4 years. And the one-year growth from 2014 to 2015 will be equal to all the Internet traffic in the world last year. Clearly, the Internet industry is growing and innovating at lightning speed. And why has this industry been able to do this? Well, it's because the environment for innovation and job creation has been ripe, with government regulation not getting in their way. Imagine that. The government has stayed out. It's taken the light touch approach, and the industry has prospered as a result. The broadband expansion we've seen, the innovation that has occurred with the computers and tablets, the explosion of smartphones and mobile devices, and the increase in job creation all occurred. All of this has happened without the FCC's open Internet order. So why does the government want to start regulating now? Is it because the Internet endangers public health or the environment? Clearly not. Yet the proponents of Internet regulation claim that the freedom and growth of the Internet are in jeopardy. And quite frankly, it's my respectful opinion that that's ridiculous. To suggest that some type of regulation is needed flies in the face of the growth of the Internet economy. This is one of the problems facing our economy and plaguing our country. We are regulating where regulation is not needed. We are regulating based on speculation, and we are regulating in search of a problem. This is not how we encourage innovation. This is not how we create certainty in the marketplace, and this is definitely not how to encourage job creation. Over the past few weeks, all we have talked about is jobs, and rightfully so, because throughout America, the #1 issue facing Americans is jobs or the lack thereof. Yet here we are debating whether to overturn a regulation on one of the few growth areas of our economy, one of the few sectors that has and is creating good, high-paying jobs. This should be common sense, and it's just no wonder that people watching at home think that this place, that Washington, D.C., that the federal political process is out of touch and dysfunctional. Now, as the FCC has drafted the open Internet order, the Commission heard from broadband providers, including small businesses, about the problems the order would create and the negative impacts that it would have on consumers. One small Internet provider stated that the imposition of network management rules will hinder its ability to obtain investment capital and deploy new services in unserved areas. The regulations would also increase costs, and it would hamper innovation, which would only further discourage outside investment in the company. In other words, the Internet regulation that we're talking about here today, this regulation would lead to lower quality of services and would raise operating costs, which would result in higher prices on consumers. So we can clearly see the impacts of Internet regulation. Less investment, less innovation, higher prices for consumers, lower quality services, increased business costs, and ultimately fewer jobs. Companies will spend more money on compliance, on basically complying with these regulations, instead of investing it in innovation and driving down prices. more money will be spent on lawyers and not on engineers. Now, let me be clear. The Internet will still exist if Washington bureaucrats get their way on this. The Internet's still going to exist, but the order's impact will be profound, and it's going to disrupt what has been one of America's proudest entrepreneurial and industrial achievements in our history. Now, I've heard proponents say that this regulation will preserve the open Internet as it exists today, but it is my humble opinion, respectfully, that this is short-sighted. Personally, I don't want to continue using the Internet of today. I want the Internet of tomorrow. I want the devices and the applications I use today to soon be obsolete and out of date, because the industry has continued to churn out something newer, something better and faster. I want technologies to continue to develop and industries to continue to emerge. We are now using fewer devices for more telecommunication services, and it's not hard to imagine a day when we will use one device for all of them. Now, the industries, that's where they're headed. That's the direction that the industries are headed. But when you throw the government in the middle of it, the pace will slow. Uncertainty will enter the marketplace. And future innovations, well, they may just go unrealized. One of the beautiful things about the Internet industry is that we don't know what's around the corner in terms of new technologies and innovations. If a few years ago you would have told someone you Googled them, they probably would have been offended. But today we know that means something. So we, going forward, have no idea what the future holds, what the new innovations are going to be, what the new ideas, the new technologies. But we know that technologies that we cannot even imagine today will very soon be part of our everyday lives. And the question is whether we're going to encourage that, and particularly whether we're going to encourage that to happen here, or whether we're going to discourage that from happening. And regulating the Internet and this specific measure that we're trying today to knock down, if it passes, this specific measure will discourage that development. The FCC and the federal government cannot keep pace with the Internet and the technology industries. And the government should not attempt to catch up through regulation or legislation. And that's an important point. We're asking this government, we're asking this bureaucratic structure, which struggles to keep pace with issues we've been facing for the last 20 years, to somehow keep pace with the issues and the technology and the innovations that arrive in an Internet world. Not only do I think that's asking too much, I think it's impossible. Therefore, the government should not be looking at ways to preserve the status quo. What our government should be involved in is looking at ways to promote the future of these industries. And this Internet regulation does not promote the future. Mr. President, I have previously spoken on this floor about the new American century, about whether our country will continue to be a leader in this new century. And I believe I do, with all the noise you hear and all the bad news every time you turn on the television, I believe with all my heart that there is no reason why this 21st century should not be every bit as much the American century as the last century was. And one of the reasons I believe that is because of the advances that our entrepreneurs, our innovators are making in this field of the Internet. If there is one sector of our economy that will ensure that the next century is an American one, it is the Internet and the technology sector. It's an industry where we are the leader, and it is the one where we must continue to lead. And to do that, we must encourage innovation, incentivize investment, provide certainty in the marketplace, and promote a competitive environment that this dynamic industry needs. And that will require a passage of this resolution of disapproval. And so I urge my colleagues to vote yes on the resolution. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Texas is recognized.
How much time is left on our side?
60 minutes.
60?
60 minutes, yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I've been looking for a time when the floor was open to refute some of the comments and concerns that have been raised earlier on the floor. I want to start by taking on a comment that was made by the senator from Minnesota. Senator Franken said that YouTube started above a pizzeria in 2005 and sold for $1.6 billion 2 years later to Google. And that wouldn't have been possible without net neutrality. Well, Mr. President, we must point out that we didn't have net neutrality in 2005. We haven't had federal regulation of the Internet in this country such as we have seen last year put forward by this administration. In fact, YouTube, Google, were both created in a marketplace without net neutrality regulations. Other online successes, Facebook, Hulu, Twitter, as new devices like the Apple iPhone and Amazon Kindle, all of which happened without net neutrality regulations. These are innovations that have changed communication patterns in our world as well as our country. So we have had these innovations without the heavy hand of government. You know, it's very interesting to hear the debate on the floor because we seem to hear that net neutrality is something that will keep the Internet open. The opposite is true. It is beginning to put the clamps on the success that we have had by having an open Internet. And all these companies that they're talking about needing net neutrality to come forward and blossom and grow are the companies that have done exactly that without net neutrality regulations. What we want to do is assure that we don't put a blanket over the Internet and start saying to everybody who has a new idea, a new product, a new service provider, you better go to the FCC before you go forward with that, or you could be in jeopardy. You could be penalized. You could be thought to have an unreasonable product on the Internet, because we don't know yet what reasonable is. We just know you have to be reasonable because we now have a new regulation that says you must be reasonable, but no definition of what this FCC, which had no authority to go into this area, is going to determine is a reasonable product that won't interfere with anything else. Mr. President, we haven't had net neutrality before. All the successes that I hear talked about in this debate have happened without the heavy or light hand of government stopping the originality and innovation that has marked the success of our country. Mr. President, Senator Kerry, the senator from Massachusetts, earlier also said that the Internet made the 1996 Telecommunications Act obsolete 6 months after it was enacted. But if the 1996 Act did not sufficiently address the Internet, thus making it obsolete, how can that same law be the genesis and basis of the FCC's assertion that it has the power to regulate the Internet? You have to have one or the other. And it is our assertion that the FCC did not get specific authority to regulate the Internet that is required for Congress to give it in order to make rules in this area. So Senator Kerry can't have it both ways. He can't say that the Telecommunications Act was obsolete, but it is also the basis of these new restrictive regulations. Senator Kerry sent a dear colleague letter to everyone asking them in the Senate to vote against this resolution. And what I think Senator Kerry was saying is that net neutrality is not a regulation of the Internet because Internet service providers that it's just a regulation of the on-ramp, that we're not here trying to support the FCC regulating the whole Internet. They're just doing the gateway. They're just doing the on-ramp. Well, that was the position that the FCC took when they made this regulation. But you can't argue that net neutrality is not regulation of the Internet because the Internet service providers are the only on-ramps to the Internet. It's a misleading statement to say that just regulating the on-ramp isn't regulating the Internet. The Internet is the entire global network of millions of computer networks. It uses the Internet Protocol Standard to interconnect with each other. Internet backbone providers and last-mile Internet service providers serve as the foundation of the Internet. So they are the foundation. It is websites and services like email and voice over IP, VoIP, that allow the users to communicate on top of the foundation. The Internet is the whole online ecosystem put together. You can't have the edge without the core, and vice versa. The on-ramps are as much a part of the information superhighways as the cars traveling on it are. Now, FCC Commissioner Robert McDowell put it well in his dissent from the Open Internet order that we are discussing today. He said, "To say that today's rules don't regulate the Internet is like saying that regulating highway on-ramps, off-ramps, and pavement don't equate to regulating the highways themselves." Well, you know, Mr. President, if we're going to say you can regulate the on-ramp, you're saying that is the first heavy hand of government that is going to start controlling and making decisions about what is reasonable and what isn't. And that means you're going to have to go and say, "Mother, may I," to the FCC, if you have an innovative product which is going to cost more to the consumer because you've had to go now and hire lawyers to go to the FCC to get prior approval, or it is going to delay the product getting out to the consumers and possibly let someone in a country like Europe that isn't having these kinds of barriers put up to its service providers get ahead of us. Mr. President, Internet technology is the basis of hundreds of thousands of jobs and products in our country. We are in a crisis right now. We all know we have 9% unemployment. Our economy is even to dead in the water. And we've got to do something to jumpstart the economy, not put another blanket on it to make it harder for it to come back. I don't think anybody with common sense in this country is going to say we have a thriving economy right now. So it does defy common sense to say that we are going to allow regulations that Congress has not approved, that Congress has not authorized the regulator to make, that will have the effect of either freezing or delaying the innovation that has been the hallmark of the success of the Internet and technology in our country. Mr. President, there are several organizations that have banded together to ask that people vote for the resolution today. And I want to submit for the record the letter from, among others, the Americans for Tax Reform, the Taxpayers Protection Alliance, the Hispanic Leadership Fund, and Americans for Prosperity. They've written a letter, which I will ask be submitted for the record and for the congressional record, that says the FCC enacted these net neutrality rules despite a complete lack of congressional authorization and after being told by a court that they lack jurisdiction. Remember that this court said in the Comcast case to the FCC, you and basically all the other regulatory agencies that are independent must have specific authority from Congress to regulate in an area. And they found in the Comcast case that they did not have such a jurisdiction. The FCC's order also runs contrary, the letter says, to the broad and bipartisan conversation in Washington about how best to grow the economy and spur job creation. President Obama and members in Congress on both sides of the aisle have called to rein in overbearing regulations that harm economic growth. And yet, here we have yet another regulation on top of the EPA and the NLRB and the NMB coming forward to put a damper on our economy. So, Mr. President, I submit the letter that is signed by Grover Norquist, Phil Kerpen, David Williams, Thomas Schatz, and Mario Lopez for the record in support of Resolution 6.
Without objection.
And, Mr. President, I want to read from a letter that was written by Phil Kerpen. Actually, it was an opinion piece written by Phil Kerpen, who is with the Americans for Prosperity. And I thought that this was relevant to the debate. Network neutrality sounds nice. Originally, it was the idea that all of the traffic that travel over the networks that comprise the Internet should be treated exactly the same way. But engineers cried foul, because the routers that make the Internet work are highly sophisticated, with millions of lines of code that necessarily prioritize different types of traffic. For instance, streaming video can't tolerate delays, whereas an email could. So network neutrality morphed into something even more dangerous, empowering the FCC bureaucrats to play traffic cops, micromanaging networks and deciding which traffic can or can't be prioritized. The result would be a precipitous decline in private investment, because the companies that spend billions of dollars building networks could no longer be certain how the FCC bureaucrats would allow those networks to be used. I'm reading from this letter, and I will continue. The letter says, a recent study from New York University found that hundreds of thousands of jobs would be lost. The tech sector, the brightest spot in our economy, would be burdened by federal regulations the way the rest of the economy has been. So, Mr. President, these are excerpts from Mr. Kerpen's opinion piece that says it is now crunch time to stop the FCC's Internet takeover. I think that these outside groups that are weighing in are showing that just regular consumers — I heard the list of groups that are supporting this regulation, this rule that has come out, but just the citizens that are for free markets and for tax reform and for letting our businesses grow and thrive through the American innovation. I like some of the things that they have said that I think are very important in this debate. So, Mr. President, I urge my colleagues to look at whether we are exercising our responsibility as members of Congress when we would vote against stopping a federal agency that has not had a delegation of authority from Congress to regulate in this area. The House of Representatives has already voted in favor of this resolution. We need to send it to the President and say to the President, Congress did not delegate our authority, it is overstepping its bounds, and furthermore, it is going to put a damper on the most thriving part of our economy today, and that is the tech sector. It is where we are hands down ahead in the world because we have kept the free markets. Why would we give that up to unelected federal agencies who have not been asked by Congress to regulate in this area? And if we did, we should be required, because it is our constitutional responsibility to do so, to say exactly what we would ask a policy to be in a new regulation. We have not done it, Mr. President, and we should not allow the federal agencies who are appointed but not elected to take over this area that is so important for our economy. If we have any guts at all in this Senate, we should stand up for our one-third of the balance of power in the federal government and assert ourselves to keep control over runaway federal agencies that do not answer to anyone. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor and reserve the balance of our time.
President.
Senator from West Virginia is recognized.
Mr. President, I would like to respond on some things, but as I understand there are only 40, the Senator would like to respond on some things, but I understand that we only have 42 minutes remaining.
Correct.
And we have both Senator Cantwell and Senator Udall, Mark Udall, who wants to speak on this. Or is it the presiding officer?
I believe it's the senator from Colorado.
The senator from Colorado. And I don't want to take up their time. So at this point, I would just note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Mr. President.
The senator from Texas is recognized.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be lifted.
Without objection.
Mr. President, how much time is left on our side?
44 minutes.
Thank you. And I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Mr. President.
Senator from West Virginia is recognized.
I ask unanimous consent that the order of the quorum call be rescinded.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I have 5 unanimous consent requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of the majority and the minority leaders. I ask unanimous consent that these requests be agreed to and that these requests be printed in the record, and that with respect to time and quorum calls, that they be equally divided as between the two sides.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered.
And I note the absence of quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
It's not running right now. I don't do it till the quorum call's over because you can't possibly.
No, but you're keeping times in place and you're just subtracting from both.
Right. Well, I've written down what time the quorum call started, and then when that coming in.
Yeah, so that's how you do it.
That's how I do
I
it.
didn't know if you had your own stopwatch.
Alan would do that, but I don't.
What do you mean?
Alan keeps the stopwatch.
He has his own stopwatch? He doesn't work by you?
People not buy music.
So the pending business on the Senate floor is a resolution expressing disapproval of recent FCC rules regarding net neutrality. A vote on that resolution is expected tomorrow. And later today in the Senate, more work on a bill repealing a 3% withholding tax for certain federal contractors. Coming up this afternoon at 3 o'clock Eastern on C-SPAN 3, a simulcast of the New Hampshire Today radio show from Bow, New Hampshire. 3 Republican presidential candidates are calling into the radio show, John Huntsman, Ron Paul, and Newt Gingrich. And the in-studio guests include New Jersey Governor Chris Christie and New Hampshire Secretary of State William Gardner, who's overseeing the state's first-in-the-nation presidential primary on January 10th. So that's our live coverage coming up at 3 o'clock Eastern on C-SPAN 3.
Thank you.